Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Off the Record. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest and someone who I've been waiting a while to talk to, and I'm super excited to talk to. ARCA driver Willie Mullins. Willie, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Great to be on the show today.
Awesome. Now, I just heard from your wife. You were working on a trash truck a few minutes ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, we that's our main business is we work on trash trucks and repair them. I was outside getting my plan together for Monday, so we were getting parts list together to fix the next one in line.
Nice. Now, do you all normally do like a full, like when you say work on, is it like full mechanical stuff, body stuff, like what all?
Well, we specialize more in where they get worn out inside. You wouldn't believe how abrasive trash is. So the inside of these trucks get worn out every 3 to 5 years. So inside of every one of your trash trucks, you're going to see them get repaired, major repairs. So that's what we specialize in. But we also do mechanical, paint and body work. We're a full gamut here at our shop.
Oh, nice. I knew you all did some work on trash trucks, but I didn't realize it was that in depth and stuff like that. Cause I know I've seen some of your wife's TikToks, which we'll get into later on in the show, talking about her social media presence. So, I know a little bit about you, but for the folks at home, kind of just talk about who you are and what you do on a day-to-day life and talk about how you're a race car driver.
Well, yeah, it started out many years ago when I was a little kid. Started out junior drag racing league when NHRA brought that around. So that was kind of cool. That was my introduction into motorsports. I mean, my family's been longtime drag racers. My uncle, my dad, my granddad used to go to Old Dominion Speedway and watch Lee Petty and all of them back in the day. So it's been in our family since well before I was ever born. And then I got tired of the drag racing thing because you worked on them so much and then you were only in the car a short amount of time. So it kind of led me into SCCA. And then SCCA is where I bought an old NASCAR Cup car from Joe Falk. And we raced that for many, many years. And then ARCA finally went back to a road course. And that's where I got my start in ARCA. So it just took off from there. And we've kind of turned it into something these past 10 or 12 years.
Nice. So kind of talk about the SCCA stuff. I know you said I did a little bit of research and it sounds like you said, you just bought an old cup car and went SCCA race. So talk about that. Cause I feel like that's a culture that a lot of NASCAR fans kind of know a little bit about, but not as much.
Yeah, it actually, it was one of those things. It's what do you do with an old NASCAR stock car, right? So back then, that was before they really had the Super Cup series and things like that. So I bought it, and then we had a series that was running. So I got in with those guys, and they kind of walked me through the whole process of getting my license in SCCA and getting this car legal. And I believe it or not, I built my first motor off of eBay. So I built that motor off of eBay, and we that whole first year and had great success. And it really taught you a lot of car control and taught you a lot about, watching for flags and watching for other racers. And, in SCCA, the track never goes under caution. So you're racing out there with safety workers out there, you got ambulances on the course. I mean, it's one of those kind of Mario Kart scenarios sometimes when you're out there in SCCA, and it really makes you aware of what's going on around you, not what's inside the car. So it was a big, big learning experience to be able to transition into ARCA. So it had its place and it did great for me.
And that was your first like actual like oval or like not oval track, but like more than drag racing
Yeah,
appearances.
that was my first intro. I wasn't one of these kids that went into go-kart racing and did all the legends and bandos, and that stuff was after I went road racing. And then I wanted to get into circle track racing. So I was like, we ran a bando, a legends car one time, and then we started testing a little bit here and there at Shenandoah and Dominion Raceway. And then once we did that, that's kind of where we got our feet wet and went into Daytona that first year. And was it 2008, I think, or something like that.
Mhm.
And it was awesome experience to jump off into Daytona and get our feet wet going, turning left.
No, that's awesome. In that case, then talk a little bit about the transition from going from drag racing to a little bit of road course racing to oval track racing. What does that entail for someone like you who is getting your feet wet and starting out in those situations?
For me, drag racing is all about preparation, right? The car's got to be perfect. It has to be 110% before you even roll it out there. So when we took that and transitioned into road racing, we always had a good car. We never had really mechanical issues. It was more, incidences or things like that would put us out. But that drag racing got me, really hyper focused on making sure my car prep was right. And then once we went through road racing, that got me in sync with making sure we completed every lap in oval track racing. You know, we weren't the fastest when we first went out there, but we made sure we always had a good car that didn't fall apart and a car that always, you know, performed to what we could afford at that time. So that's how it all transitioned, each one into the next.
Okay, and that makes total sense. And you mentioned kind of talking about how the car can perform, like cost wise. I'm sure some people know of Mullins Racing. Kind of give an overview of what you all are at Mullins Racing, because I know you said you were just working on a trash truck. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming Joe Gibbs Racing right now isn't working on trash trucks or
No, no,
semis.
they don't have to work to afford. So Mullins Racing basically started out as a hobby for myself. You know, like I said, SCCA racing. That was a good hobby. You know, we did it on weekends, had fun. You know, then we transitioned into the Daytona car and turned that into what we are now. To, you know, we're a ride and drive team to a point, but I am still the main driver in our team. You know, I'm still the main focus on going out there racing, you know, and trying to get my first victory in ARCA. You know, last year we had some really good finishes, top 5 Pensacola last year, and we're starting to finally get our legs under us. You know, there's other teams that are helping us now that we're a affiliate of, so that's really made our program step up. So, you know, we've been really good at super speedways for many years, but now our short track program is finally coming together.
Nice. And who all are you affiliated with, by the way?
The Venturini team's really Big Bill's been helping us out a lot. You know, they're really behind us, trying to make sure smaller teams, and we're not the only one they're helping. They're helping a lot of smaller teams so that we all can race in a tighter pack, tighter group. You know, it makes the series look way better when we can actually go up there and rub and beat fenders on them. And you know, if you saw our Elko race, we were definitely fastest with even the points leader. You know, we wrecked him last year, so we had some unfortunate incidents at Elko, but we're finally getting speed, and we're finally, you know, getting really close to the front.
Yeah, no, that's something I noticed just from watching the ARCA series last year, and some of the things that I had caught on to is I noticed when I saw your car out there, I was like, oh, they've got decent speed, and that's something I noticed throughout the field as well. And I don't know off the top of my head how many people are affiliated with Venturini, but I know I've heard story of how they're really helping out smaller teams and trying to help the series look a lot better. I want to talk. So you've been in the ARCA series about since 2008. That was when you made your Daytona debut, you believe.
Yep.
Talk about just how it's grown since then. I know you're still a smaller team, still a bit of a part-time team, but talk about just like it's been over 10 years now. So talk about just what you've learned in that time and kind of just where you're at now from where you were then.
Yeah, from when we started at Daytona that first year, you know, that was the first year of you know, the last year of the steel body car, I believe. And then, you know, that was also the start of this Ilmore program. So when we started the first year, we went down with a motor I built. You know, we got lucky to get in the field, you know, and did all that. But then the next year, when that Ilmore came out, that leveled the playing field for a lot of us. You know, so we were able to go down there and qualify with the best of the best, and able to turn this team from just maybe making it floundering around to being a legit contender at these super speedway tracks. So, you know, it's been one of those things that ARCA has unfortunately made us spend a little bit of money, but in the long run, these Ilmores and the 5-star composite bodies have made us so much more competitive now that we can compete against the Gibbs and the Venturinis.
Yeah, no, I know the Ilmore engines. They've been in the truck series as well, and people have talked
Yep.
about the cost cutting that's happened with them as well. I've talked to several small teams, and they talk about how it's a lot nicer to not have to worry about, oh, where are we going to get a new motor from if something
Right.
happens. So, and that's
Right.
probably a $10,000 cost. Well, I'm probably wrong on that number. I'm sure it's more than $10,000, but that's a major budget that you can use into other things as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and before, when ARCA was big, you had to lease a motor from one of the Cup teams to be competitive. You know, and that was a huge expense that we would never, you know, entail. So now we're able to get these Ilmore motors. We're allowed to, you know, put 1,500 to 2,000 miles on them, and it keeps us in the game with the other teams. You know, as long as we stay on the Ilmore program and stay keeping them fresh and trying to do that, then we're definitely able to compete now with the top teams.
nice. And when you say keeping them fresh, kind of just for the folks who want to explain what that means a little
So
bit.
what that means is after every 1,500 to 2,000 miles, we have to send that motor back to Ilmore. The reason we have to send it back to Ilmore and we can't do it ourselves is they are a sealed motor, right?
Hmm.
So what that is, we can't open them up. We can't do any performance advantages to the inside of those motors. So we send them back to Ilmore. They put all the new parts in them, and then they send it back, and that motor is good for another 2,000 miles. So it keeps that motor fresh, and we're always in that routine so that we don't have parts failures when we go to the track.
Nice. And that's like we said, that's a really great program. It saves you all money
Yeah,
in the long run and definitely makes the field more competitive.
absolutely. It makes us very competitive with the other teams. They can't take their motors apart, and we can't take our motors apart, and it keeps us all very, very close, especially at Daytona and Talladega.
Yeah, and kind of speaking of Daytona and Talladega, I'm kind of curious because I definitely looked through your racing reference and kind of looked through a lot of your circle track history. You really, for a long time, only ran the super speedway races, and I'm just
Yep.
curious as to, the thought process behind that. I know obviously that it's a better chance for smaller teams to either get
Yep.
better TV time or have a better chance at winning, but just kind of talk about you all kind of did that for a very long time. Just kind of talk about the thought process behind that.
Yeah, it was one of those David versus Goliath. Like you said, it's the biggest chance we have to run really well. In 2018, we almost won the race. And that was one of the first really good finishes we had, and people got to see us and notice us. And it's one of those things. That's why we really focused on the super speedway stuff. Is we got a really cheap car the first time, so that car has been a great car, and many people had been through it. So we were able to get a good speedway car early in our process. So when we did that, we were able to keep working on that car, making it better, making it better. And then now we've been able to find a second car, and now we have two really good speedway cars. And that's why we really focus on the super speedway stuff. And I enjoy it to a point. I'm starting to really like short track racing now. That's been a lot better, a lot more fun. We've had a lot more success. So it's all like you said. We're transitioning from one into another to make ourselves better and make ourselves stand out a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, that's an awesome way to do it is to slowly build yourself into it, especially for a team of your size. So, how many cars do you all have in the shop now then?
Currently, we have 4 or 5 cars. We have the same amount of motors. We've
Okay.
been able to, continually build our Ilmore packages and have different motors because we have, a short track car that we'll have ready for 5 flags this year. So it's a lot of, like I said, it's small building. You see a lot of these teams come in and go out. We want to be here a long time, so we slowly built this team, and had more cars and be able to put deals together to get motors. And so it's one of those things we've slowly built it so we're not financially strapped and we can continue to race at the level we want to race at.
Yeah, and that's a great point you bring up is you're playing a very long game here, and that's working out for you all as compared to teams that kind of come in, go in fast, and then fizzle out at some point. So
We want to be, there with the Venturinis 10, 15 years from now, running with them still to make this series look good. We don't want to be like, unfortunately, some of these smaller teams that came in, bought a bunch of equipment, and they were gone in 3 years. We've been here a long time, and we plan on being here a lot longer. And it may not be with me driving. We may have other drivers, and we may have funding come in. So it's some of those things that we're slowly building towards.
yeah, and that's awesome that you're able to build towards them. You bring up other drivers. I know last season you had a few different people in the car. Talk about them and kind of just your relationships with them, and hopefully how I know you've announced a few of them possibly coming
Yeah.
back for 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we've always done to help raise a little bit of funding is there's a test at Daytona in January. So what ARCA likes to do is if you have a new and upcoming driver, they come down, we put them in the car, and they get to show their abilities in front of the ARCA group, and then the race directors decide, what races during the year they can race and things like that off of this test. So every year since we went to Daytona, we've always brought 3, 4, 5 drivers with us, and then we've got them approved, and like so what happened last year is Brayton Laster came with us to the test. He got approved and he was able to race with us at Daytona and Talladega. So that was able to help us fund some more of my racing along with getting him more exposure. So then we also had Mason Diaz last year race Bristol with us. We had an oil line failure there, which unfortunately cost us, a good finish. I think Mason is a hell of a driver. Can't wait to get him back in the car next year. And we're always looking for talented drivers to put in these cars to be able to go out there and compete for a win. And we don't need to have drivers just for money. We want to make sure we have drivers that can go out there and try to compete for wins and top fives because, we have the equipment to do it now.
Yeah, and that's a big step for a team your size to say we have the ability to go out and try and compete and have the
Yeah.
drivers behind us. I think you all have announced Landon Huffman's going to be at this year's
Yep. That's
test at
pretty
Daytona.
cool to have him. He came to us and said, "Hey, my dad was so big in the Goodies Dash days, and Landon's never been able to turn some laps there yet. So he came to us, and we worked out a deal. And this is huge for us. Landon's coming with a big following. He does some awesome stuff with podcasts and his Twitter and things like that. And then we have our modified race car driver from here, Dominion. She ran a ton of races up here this year, won 6. So that's a big thing for us. Brayton's returning this year for us at both Daytona and Talladega. So we're already starting to put together this new year, and we can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You mentioned Landon, like he has a huge following. Obviously, he was the Hickory Track champion this year for late model or super late models, but
Yeah.
he's doing so much more just social media wise and YouTube wise and really helping kind of grow that short track scene and that asphalt short track scene
And
specifically.
it's crazy, going into the social media side of it now that, Landon saw us because of our TikToks, and who would have ever thought that a 40-year-old guy could get hooked up on this TikTok program and platform and been able to tell everybody around the world who we are, what we're doing, how we're growing our team. This Amazon wish list thing took off too. And it's been great so far for everybody to use TikTok as a great platform to get out to our niche audience to make sure we're heard. Our stories are being told.
Yeah, no, and I was gonna bring that up and you brought it up perfectly. Your wife Dinah, that's how your name's pronounced, right?
That is correct.
Dinah started doing a TikTok. Essentially, that's how I found you all, is originally through TikTok. I knew of you from my time watching ARCA as a kid growing up, but like I found her TikTok. It's been about a year or so ago, and just like her following you around with the "What are you doing today, Willie Mullins?" and
That's
we're
right.
working on a trash truck, or we're painting a car, or we're putting a radiator in, and stuff like that. So kind of just, and you mentioned the Amazon, which was talk about just how you all have kind of blown up, because I feel like no matter when I get on TikTok during the day, I always see a new video from you all about something you're doing or something that's happening.
And that's what we try to do is, it only takes, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes to throw one of these 30-second videos together. So it's the easiest way to get our story out there, right? Where there's no production in any of mine. She'll put a little production behind hers, but you know what? It tells the story, and you can see what I'm doing during the day, or you get to see how we're updating the super speedway car, and how we're continually moving forward, and show we're not stagnant, and we're not hoping to go racing. We're going to go racing, and we're going to show our fans that how we're doing to go racing.
Yeah, I think the last one I saw, you all were putting a radiator in on a super
Yep.
speedway car. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that
it's
was
just,
this past Saturday, and this is all current stuff that we're moving forward. There's only about 30 days until we go to this test, so we have a whole car to put together, and we got to get my car finished up. So it's pretty wild of what we got to going on, and TikTok's going to be full of our stories these next couple days.
yeah. And you say 30 days for you to put a car together and go to Daytona, but that's also on top of your day-to-day life of running your shop and stuff. So
Yeah, that's making sure all our employees have work to do, and we're keeping the customers happy. It's crazy what we have to accomplish in the next 30 days, but we have a good group of people that work here at our shop and at the race shop. So we have a lot of weekend warriors over there with my friend Robert and Daryl, and Kayla's working on this car, and everybody's putting it together over the next 30 days. So it's going to be a thrash, but I think we'll be all right.
yeah, no, it sounds like it, but I think you'll be fine. So kind of for the folks at home, take us through like what does a day-to-day look like at the shop for you all? I know obviously you've got the regular business stuff, but just like when Willie Mullins wakes up and he walks into work, what does it look like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, and we start here early. We start at 5 o'clock here at our regular business, and that is our main focus. 110% goes into our main business, because if we don't have that, we can't afford to race. So then I do all that, keep all the customers happy here, and then about 4:30, 5 o'clock, we transition to getting on the race cars and trying to work on those for a couple hours at night. We really don't spend many full days over there working on it. So it's kind of a balancing act for us here. We got to keep this place open, but we also have to have these cars ready to test at Daytona January 13th and 14th. So it's like I said, it's just a balancing act to make sure everything gets done, and we can try to please as many people as we can.
Yeah, no, and that's for sure trying to keep that blended balance. So just
Yeah,
to make sure I understand that right, you start at 5 a.m. and then move to the race cars at about 4 p.m., correct?
yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
You spend
So
about a 12-hour workday.
yeah, it's 12 hours over here. And then, it's probably another 4 or 5 hours over there. Some nights, I'll be honest, when I leave here at work, I don't go work on the race cars. I'm too tired, just don't care. And it does take some passion, though. Some nights when we got to get it done, we just got to go over there and hammer it out. And that's, unfortunately, in these next 30 days, that's what we're at. We got to hammer it out and get this car ready to go.
And I think I saw recently you all are now officially swapping. I know you all have several different chassis that are different, like makes technically. So I know you all have a Chevy, and I believe your Ford is now swapping over to the Mustang, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was the car that Brayton ran at Talladega, and the body got tore off of. So this summer, if you look back at our TikToks, we saw the whole chassis completely stripped. All the 10 work was gone out of it. So that's been a project going on for the past 4 or 5 months, and now it's back here for final assembly, and that's what we're putting together is the new Mustang to go test at Daytona.
Nice, and that's awesome that you all were able to finally get the Mustang body up to. I know DGR had ran that a bunch this season or this
Yeah,
past season,
believe it
excuse
or
me.
not. So the story behind the body is we actually, since DGR is switching to Toyota, we bought our body from DGR. So it's a used body to where we can afford to put a used body and update that car to make it look good again.
That's awesome that you all are able, and again, that's the positive of ARCA. It has that, and I talked about this with several people because I was at Salem last year for their fall race
Okay.
for ARCA,
Yep.
and I talked to several people about like how everything about ARCA feels very a hometown short track.
Yep.
Like the fact that you're able to kind of just go to a fellow competitor and be like, "Hey, you're not using this, we'll buy it off of you," or the
Right.
fact that like Venturini's helping you out. It's a very like homey it's a very homey series, and that everyone's
Yep.
there for everybody and everyone's looking out for everybody, and while your competitors on whatever given Saturday or Friday night or wherever you're at, one day your friends helping each other at the next, and that's something I love about the ARCA series personally. So
Absolutely. And what's been great for me is, we've had friends help us all along the way. It wasn't, me just trudging through doing this by myself. We started out with Andy Belmont helping us get the Speedway program figured out. Then along the way, we had crew chief changes, and we had Tony Furr helping us. And, we've had Frank Kimmel, in our ears some. We've had, Billy Venturini and the Big Bill. And it's a culmination of all these people put this team where it is. It isn't just me. It's my wife with the media side. It's all these friends that have been helping us. So it's been a great a great, I don't know how you say it. It's just been a great experience that these guys I watch on TV, when I was a little kid, have helped me along the way to get to where we are right now.
yeah, and that's awesome. That's the whole like, I talk about it with friends, and like there are people in racing and then there are racers.
Yep.
And hearing a lot of the stories of the ARCA guys and some of the smaller teams without motorsports in general, they're racers. They're people like you that work a day job and then go work on the race car and then do the best they can with what they have, and slowly seeing your program build up from 2008 of just buying an old cup car from Joe Falk and happening to go to Daytona to being where you're at now, and getting several drivers in the car and going to several races and having a pretty big presence now. I would argue for you all. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's crazy how our social media has turned our little team into a big, super giant, social media, conglomerate of all these people. And it's crazy to who we are now from where we came. Sometimes we don't give ourselves credit on where we are, but it's become a great thing. And we are the little mom and pop team, I guess you could say, that's competing against the Gibbs and the Venturinis, and we're pretty successful.
Yeah, no, very successful. I do want to ask though, you brought it up earlier, and I'm sure you've been asked about it since it's happened. So Elko was a little bit of an interesting event for you. Kind of talk about, was that your first ever short track start, or?
Oh, no. So that was my fourth or fifth time at Elko. And
Okay.
I think I've got 10 or 20 starts at short tracks, but it was one of those things. We had such a good car that, I mean, literally I ran over people in the middle of the corner, and a couple of them were marginal, but when I ran over Nick Sanchez, I just cleaned him out. It was unfortunate for me as a driver, but to be honest, it was great for TV. It gave that race from being a boring, bland short track race to there's Willie Mullins again turning somebody else, and I did get called to the hauler, and we did have a talk about it, and at least we were racing for position with all those cars that we did wreck. But it was one of those things we turned a boring short track race into something everybody could talk to for a little bit. So I'm not proud of it, but I'm happy we were there and they knew we were there to compete.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. You mentioned like you were fighting for position. You weren't a lap down car that was in the way or anything like that. I'm curious, did any other drivers come after you after the race or say anything?
No,
or?
I went and found them. It was one of those things. I had an apology tour after that race, so we made sure we went to the pits and talked to everybody and apologized to them, because some of those, that was their first start. Some of them, it was just one of those things. Like I said with Nick, I ran him clean over. And, we're going to build from that. We're going to be better. We're going to be stronger next year when we go back to Elko, and hopefully we can get that top 5 in the main series is what we're looking for.
Yeah, and so you all run a few races in the main series. What about the East and West series? Do you all run anything normally in there?
We run the same thing. We run a couple races in the East, and we run a couple races in the main ARCA. So we try to balance it out. We're planning to do the same thing again this year. We'll run 5 or 6 races again, and we'll try to have some good success.
Nice. And do you kind of have an idea of what those races are, the way fans can expect to see out?
So we're definitely going to do Daytona, Talladega. That's definite, with Brayton in the second car. I'm planning on going to 5 Flags, and you'll see me in a Hillenburg number there. Same thing, we're going to plan on going to Elko. I think Mason's going to come back, and he's going to run Bristol again and maybe Dover.
Okay.
So that's kind of our sketched in plan right now, and then we'll build from there. And there may be some races I just like, let's go race here or there. I'd love to go back to Nashville before they redo it. I love that old track, and it'd be cool to see.
Nice. Yeah, if you're in Nashville, I'll probably end up heading out there for the day and doing some video work. So
Awesome.
I definitely am excited for that one. I think, and I want to ask you this as well. So on the day we're recording this, about an hour or so ago, ARCA made a really big announcement, arguably, about how every single main series race is going to be broadcast live on Fox Sports, whether FS1 or FS2. I kind of want to ask you, how do you feel about that?
Oh, that's awesome. It's one of those things. Unfortunately, our series is a little behind in money and and getting our races live. But now hearing that, and that's the next step. We need to keep promoting, because one of the things we're worried about as car owner with my wife is Cars Tour has became a pretty predominant short track series. So we're up against them, and we hear some changes. We're not sure what's happened with Cars Tour yet. So, we're competing against that series on our TV packages, on our prize money. We're having to run the spec motor and the spec body, but, we need to be able to compete against that Cars Tour to be able to have a good product. So, we got to work on that. With us being able to be live on all these races, that'll help us with hopefully some sponsorship.
Nice. And you kind of bring up an interesting point. I know a little bit about the Cars Tour. I'm very new in asphalt late model racing. Where I grew up and where I live now is very much a dirt track area and dirt track scene. So kind of talk about the kind of like competition that you all see between ARCA and Cars Tour. Because Cars Tour, I know, like you mentioned, especially in the past, I would say year or so, it's really kind of blown up in a big way.
Yeah, I truly believe, ARCA is a great place for racing, and then you get a lot of experience. But I truly believe, too, is, your local late model, your local asphalt short track late model series, that is where a lot of talented drivers are and come from. Look at Mason Diaz. He's one of the most talented drivers right now. We got to get him a little bit more polished, but, the kid's got wheels. Same thing, Landon Huffman coming from these late models. These guys are very talented, and then you put them on this Cars Tour program and platform that have good TV. They have name recognition with Dale Jr. running. You never might see Harvick out there. There's some other guys coming. So, you really got to look at where we're at in the ARCA platform versus Cars Tour on getting eyes on us. So with these names in Cars Tour, getting eyes on them, it hurts us a little bit. So we got to make sure we can compete on that same platform to get, cost per viewer on that sponsor that we're putting on the quarter panel.
Yeah, and definitely I think as someone who's followed the series a little bit more closely over the past few years, for me and ARCA, I think that especially last year of getting it on Flow Racing is a big plus, but now that you're going to be on a cable television channel, at least for the main series, is a big deal for everyone involved for sure.
Absolutely, anytime you can go live with our series, it's huge. So, and it's pretty cool to see that we have a lot of young talent coming through our series. The big news, and we're a huge supporter of Raja Caruth. He was a great kid to race with this year, and he's been a great friend of mine. So we're proud to have these kids move up. But we also need to make sure we focus on a guy like me or Greg Van Alst, Sean Core. There's a lot of those guys that are continually building this series to make sure these kids have a place to go when they come out of the cars tour and want to move up to the next step.
That's a big thing too that I've seen. You have a few of the like staples in the series, like the Billy Venturinis and
Yep.
like the Sean Cores and like you all, and you see teams that are starting up and stuff like that, trying to be more established ARCA series teams, and I think that you all have a really big influence on the young guys. Like the time that you all get a shared track experience with Rajah Caruth or with Nick Sanchez or Daniel Dye, who's also moving up to the truck series, or
Yep.
even Ty Gibbs, who's now going cup racing next year.
Absolutely.
So I
This
think,
is, and these kids are the best of the best. Ty Gibbs, like him or hate him, the kid lives and dies what he's doing. So you got to respect that. And as an older guy, I respect that because I wish I had the time to devote like that kid does. And it's great to see these kids steward on our sport, so they can continue to move up. But it's still important, that we have a place like myself, like I was saying, Greg, Will Kimmel, all these guys that are dedicated to our series to make sure we can, show our talents and our equipment on live TV. And it's great that we're getting Fox Sports 1 and, FS2 to be part of this.
yeah, no, for sure. I'm curious then. So you bring up specifically the Cars Tour, just late model racing in general. What is the different, like, why do you choose to run ARCA as to the Cars Tour races or late model races in general?
Well, when we started, there really wasn't a Cars Tour. That was back in the day when it was, man, I can't remember what it was, the Jackaroo barbecue deal,
Oh yeah.
when it had the more ASA style cars. And then that transitioned over into the late model style car. So it wasn't a thing when I started, right? So I didn't want to run local racing because it's just not my thing. There's a little too much drama for me, things like that. So I went into ARCA, and the guys at ARCA treat you as an equal. You know, the guys that want to see you do good will race you just as hard, but there isn't the drama that your Saturday night show has. So
Hmm.
that's why we've always tried to continue to promote our ARCA series, because we believe in where we're at and what we're doing. So that's why it hasn't, turned me into wanting to go Cars Tour racing, because I'm dedicated to where we're at. Would it be great to go do some one-off stuff in Cars Tour? Sure, but my home's in ARCA and always will be.
No, that's awesome that you have that drive and that passion for it. I told a friend recently about how, again, when I went to Salem, like there's excitement around ARCA coming to town. Like you can
Absolutely.
feel it. Like when I was there in the press box, like the stands were packed because Salem people knew that this was their big event. Like they were going to be on a TV broadcast somewhere, whether it was Mav or Flow. And now this upcoming year, it's going to be Fox. I think Fox Sports 2 has their broadcast, but like it's exciting. And I imagine like when they go to Elko or when they go to Berlin or DeCoin, like there's that energy there in the series that the fans are coming out to see big name drivers for you all. So
Yeah, and that's what's pretty cool. You go to Elko, and you're used to going to Daytona, where we're not the big game in town, right? So you go to Elko, the shortest track, and then we're the show. We're there to put on a great event for them, and it's awesome to see the fans. They come out from everywhere. That place is packed, and they have a good spectator attendance. So it's great to go from one to the other to see when, we're not really the big show at Daytona, but we are when we go to Elko, or like I said, Salem, all these little tracks. It's pretty cool to be part of that.
I want to ask, so kind of going back to the TikTok celebrity stuff. I think I remember seeing this. It was back in the summer though. I want to talk about your all's team logo,
Yeah,
because I believe you all got in trouble for it. Is that correct?
it a little bit. It was pretty cool. So when COVID happened, we can back up to there. So we were playing go karts in my parents' front yard, right? So we called that White Oak Speedway, and my dad, for some reason, still has his old open face helmet. So I put that on with some goggles, and that's kind of how that logo, believe it or not, came about. And then I said, well, it's just hammered down shitbox racing out here in the front yard, and that kind of stuck. And my wife knows a designer, and they kind of put it all together. We had that awesome logo, and the most fun we had was racing in the front yard go karts. Enjoying that with all our friends. We raced like 8 or 10 weekends straight during COVID, so it was pretty cool. We had some awesome racing, some hard racing, and that's kind of where it reignited my passion a little bit, and had some fun with friends.
Nice. And I assume ARCA was not a fan of that being on the hood though specifically,
Now it's
or
more of the NASCAR affiliate. NASCAR does have the rules, and we kind of knew that was coming at some point. And a friend of ours, Brad Perez, tweeted it one night while I was over working at the house. Brad has such a huge following on Twitter. It got up the right channels, and they said, "Hey, you just need to cover that word." So I was like, "Yeah, let's put a censor sticker over it."
nice. I know. I remember because I remember the logo coming out. Like I saw it on Twitter, and I thought
Yeah,
to myself, I was like, "That says what that says." And then I remember I can't remember where I saw it on the car, but I saw it on the hood, and I was like, "I wonder if this is the same logo or if they've changed
yeah.
it." So
At New Smyrna, beginning of the year, nobody really said anything there. And then when we went to Five Flags, that's when we had to cover it up.
nice. I love it. I think it's a great logo, and I think it kind of embodies kind of the homey
Yeah,
feel that your team has for sure. You mentioned Brad. Brad Perez is a super cool guy. I know he crew chiefed, I believe, at Talladega, or at least on Racing Reference it says his crew chief. And
yeah.
you've mentioned helping out Brayton, helping out other drivers, Landon Huffman, for instance. What does it mean to you to be able to try and give back to these drivers that are kind of starting their careers out?
It means a lot because I was a nobody, no name, and I just worked in my garage and built who we are. But now we have these kids that are trying to do the same thing, and if we can give them a little bit of a leg up and trying to fulfill their dream and their passion, I'm more than happy to help them. That's the biggest thing is, I can't give them money, and I can give them a little seat time here or there, but as long as they work hard, we all work together and try to improve to achieve the same goal. And that's where it's really worked out with Brad, and now with Landon and all these kids that are around us. We're trying to just help move them forward a little bit in their racing career.
Yeah, and that's kind of the theme that I've heard from you this entire interview is just giving back, whether it's Venturini helping you out or DGR helping you
Yep.
out or you helping out these guys that are just starting to get their foot in the ground or get behind the wheel of a stock car. It's awesome to see the ability, again, the hominess of the ARCA series to be able to give back to people.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. We were the fastest at Talladega during practice. And it's kind of cool. We get to gloat on Brad a little bit because we put him down as crew chief. So it's one of those things that we try to help get these kids' names out there a little bit. And it's pretty cool to pay it forward a little bit.
Speaking of young guys, though, I believe I saw a tweet recently that was looking at apparently an extra driver coming down for the Daytona test, and Travis Brown. Is that correct?
Yes, I think he's trying to put everything together. We're gonna see how that goes, and maybe put something together for him.
Nice. That I know I bumped into him once and he talked about the excitement of trying to do that and hopefully get to the Daytona test at some point. So I figured I know he just made a few starts at Hickory this past season, but I think that'd be awesome and great exposure.
And Landon's helping him, and he's another cool kid that's trying to put it together and live his dream, and we're trying to help him as much as we can.
Exactly. And again, another instance of like help and give back essentially to helping other people out. So shifting gears a little bit, 2023. We kind of talked about a little bit, talked about your schedule, talked about some of the driver lineups. When it comes to 2023 though, what are your goals as both a driver and an owner?
As a driver and owner is always to win. That's our goal. And I truly believe that we have equipment that can run really good and have a chance at a win somewhere, whether it be a short track or Daytona. So we're always trying to move forward, trying to build better cars, updating our stuff. We're not just stagnant sitting here hoping we're going to get a win. We're working towards a win. So, that's what our goal is, just continue to work forward and work towards a win.
Yeah, no, and that's a good goal to have. We've talked about how competitive you are. It's noticeable out on track, the speed that you all bring, whether it is at Daytona leading practice or at Elko knocking out Nick Sanchez. The speed's there, and you can see it in the team, and it's awesome to see. I guess you would call yourselves an underdog to be able to run competitive and be good. So
Yeah,
so
absolutely. It's one of those things. I don't mind being called an underdog, but I think we're slowly working our way away from the underdog status to being a contender.
So just long term, then you're running part time. You're running 5 or 6 races this year. Is the goal to some point get to a full ARCA Series schedule?
If I hit the lottery, sure. But it's one of those things that I would be happy with where we're running right now. I'd love to run 10 races a year, probably. It would make me more of a competitive driver. We're also this year putting a limited late together for myself so I can get some laps, so I'm not just sitting here stagnant. It's all about muscle memory, and these cars like Landon Pendleton, our local kid up here, you see him and he jumps in a Venturini car and he's fast, right? Well, he's been 100 late model shows before he got in that car that year. So that's where I'm going to work towards, is getting in a limited and start getting more and more competitive and beating and banging and trying to make myself a better racer and have a better racecraft.
Yeah, no, and Hamilton, I've heard his name around constant for short track racing for a few years now. I think he just ran Snowball Derby, and I think he was at Florence for the 400 down there as well. So he's one of those that has been getting laps. So that's awesome that you're going to be able to hopefully get a short track program going and run some limited stuff. So
yeah, and then what we're also going to try to do is, if we have some kids that are up and coming and they're unsure of themselves, it's a lot cheaper to go run some limited stuff first, and then we can take them over to the ARCA side. So it's going to be a big picture thing of what we're trying to do to put it all together.
Yeah, and like I said, kind of that giving back aspect again. The fact that you all, like, for what you all are as a team size wise, are able to give back and give opportunity to guys like Brayton and Landon and smaller guys that are just trying to get started out, like Brad or whatever. That's awesome of you all able to do. So I will ask, to kind of wrap up, fans that watch this and want to say, I want to support Willie Mullins. I want to support Willie Mullins Racing. I want to support Hammer Down Shipbox Racing. How do they support you? How can they help you out as much as they can?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether, like I said, we set up, so if you go onto our social media, you can see our Amazon wish list. If you want to donate, go buy us something for $5 or $10. That's the cheapest way to help us. And if you want, we also do give out hero cards. So if you send us a self-addressed envelope with all stamps and everything on it, we can send you that stuff. It's one of those things. We're always looking for a big sponsor, but it's one of those things, the little people that help us. We're putting everybody that donates on our Amazon wish list, they're going to have their name on the trunk lid of my car for the Daytona race. So that's what we're trying to pay back. You help us with a little donation, we're going to try to make sure your name's on our car for the Daytona race. So it's awesome. It's a culmination of everything that we're always looking. Anybody can find us on our social media and get with us if you have any options to help us out.
That's awesome. And for social media, where can people find you all at?
I believe it's on mullinsracing.net is our Facebook page, our web page. Facebook, I believe it's Mullins Racing something. My wife's good on all this stuff. And then, Willie Mullins on the TikTok, and then our Twitter is just Mullins Racing, I believe. So she's really good on that stuff. If you just type in Willie Mullins and ARCA Racer, you can usually find any of our social media stuff on Google.
Nice. I'm sure people will find your way. So, but Willie, thank you so much for your time. It's an honor and a privilege to get to speak to someone like you, and best of luck in the season.
I thank you very much for having me on the show. This is what I'm about. If I can go on anybody's podcasts or, do any of these radio shows, it's great to get the word out there to talk about ARCA, talk about a Mullins Racing program, talk about all these other great teams that make up ARCA. So it's great to be here. And anytime you want me, I'm always here for you.
We'll reach back out. Thank you so much for your time, though. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.